Hello, everybody. Welcome to the online public meeting for 1600 North State Environmental Study. Tonight, you'll hear from members of our environmental study team about the initial phase of the state environmental study happening on this stretch of road of 1600 North in Orem and Linden, and what we'll be looking at throughout the study, how you can provide input to help inform the process. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. It looks like we need to give a few more people a chance to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, it looks like we have over 30 people in attendance, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the study and gather feedback about the overall transportation needs and environmental issues that should be considered as we move through the process. The input we receive from the public will help the team develop and refine a preferred alternative or design concept that will be available for comment later in the study process. No specific designs or property impacts will be shown tonight, as we're just not that far in the process. The presentation itself will take about 15 minutes, and then we'll use the rest of the hour to address any questions from you. We do have a group of panelists from our study team that are on the line ready to answer any questions that you have, and a recording of tonight's meeting will be available tomorrow on the website for anybody who wants to review or share it with others. That website is udot.utah.gov/go/1600 North. And on the next slide, we'll show you, we have a variety of outreach channels set up to allow you to provide feedback, and we welcome your input at any time throughout the study. We do have a formal comment period that goes through November 24th. And any comment that we receive during this period will be included in the environmental document. There will be another chance for formal comment later in the study when a preferred alternative has been developed, but we will accept comments anytime throughout this process. You can call, email, visit our website, or mail in a comment form at the website, mailing address, or email shown on the screen. The kinds of comments that we want to hear from you: we want to know how you use this road. Do you live here? Do you work here? Do you walk, drive, or bike in the area? You guys know this area better than we probably do. We're looking for information also about potential environmental considerations that we should address during the study. And we're looking for your feedback so we can develop a solution that's a right fit for your community. Any comments submitted tonight through the Q&A are not considered formal comments. So if you want to make a formal comment, please remember to send it in through one of these channels before November 24th. Tonight, we have two members of our study team that will be presenting. Eric Rasband is our project manager, and Carissa Watanabe is our UDOT environmental lead. So in order to submit a question, you'll see a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. As we go through the presentation, feel free to submit questions as we go, and we'll address those as soon as our presentation is over. A couple things to keep in mind: everyone in the meeting will be able to see the questions that you submitted. You can thumbs up, you can like a comment, and that will move it to the top of the list, letting us know what we should address first. All comments, all questions during this meeting will need to be submitted via the Q&A box. There's not a way for you to ask questions verbally. So we'll ask those questions to the panel when we get there after the presentation. And I guess for now, we'll pass things over to Eric and Carissa. Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Tiffany. So UDOT is preparing a state environmental study, or what often is referred to as an SES, to evaluate the long-term mobility needs of State Route 241, which is also known as 1600 North in Orem and 600 South of Linden. It's a joint shared corridor historically. We are looking specifically at the stretch of roadway between 400 West in Linden and 1200 West Orem and State Street, also known as US 89. The goal of this study is to determine the best way to accommodate growth in the area and the mobility needs associated with that growth while limiting impacts to residents, commuters, and the environment. So how did we get here? Back in 1992, this road was identified by the Mountain Land Association of Governments as one that would need to be widened with improvements in the future. and they added it to the regional transportation plan. In 2018, Orem did an initial study to identify the widening improvements needed on 1600 North. A public meeting was held and the 5-lane widened to the south alternative was approved by the Orem Technical Advisory Committee. Later that year, Orem sent a letter to residents and purchased a handful of homes along the south side to accommodate potential future work. It's important to note that any of the homes purchased by the city were purchased using corridor preservation funds from the Utah County and were only purchased from willing sellers. In 2019, Orem and Linden requested to transfer ownership and maintenance responsibilities of 1600 North to the Utah Department of Transportation. Overall, this transfer from the cities to the state provides for better options for obtaining funding for construction and also requires us to follow the UDOT processes and complete a state environmental study. The state environmental study process is customized for a more regional view and ensures a broader range of stakeholders are engaged. And that's what we're doing right now so that we can move things forward. With efforts like this, it's very important to have a data-driven process. Normally, the UDOT process would go from planning to environmental and then design with possible future construction depending on the outcome of the environmental process. The initial work that Orem did would fall under that planning process, and now we are here at the environmental phase. So what's driving the need for this project? This graphic really helps illustrate why we are doing this study. In 2019, the traffic numbers are shown in red, which show how many vehicles are driving on the road every day. And it's important to know that these traffic volumes were collected prior to the current pandemic. And that's important because volumes dropped off dramatically during the pandemic. We're starting to see return of traffic volumes along this corridor. In 2050, traffic numbers in blue show how many vehicles are projected to be driving along the road in year 2050. As you can see, there is an expected increase in vehicles along 1600 North in the future. Just for comparison, a 3-lane roadway in this suburban type setting can typically handle between 15,000 and 18,000 cars a day. From these numbers, you can see that the traffic data along this stretch of 1600 North shows the roadway is currently overburdened, meaning it's accommodating more traffic than it is intended for ideal functionality. Changes need to be made so that 1600 North can continue to keep Utah moving in the future. So, what are some of the possible alternatives? This top cross section, the one that shows the 54-foot width, would be something of what 1600 North would look like if we tried to fit 5 10-foot lanes into the existing cross-section width. Be tight. Some of the things to ask yourself as you're looking at this cross-section is this what you would like to see? Would you like to put your trash can out on the curb with vehicles driving right next to the curb with a speed limit of 35 miles an hour? You want to see larger separation between the sidewalks and the vehicle travel lanes? Is active transportation important? Active transportation meaning walking, biking, scooters, etc. And is this important for you along this corridor? Both Orem and Linden cities have identified this as a high priority for them. As pedestrians using this corridor, what would you like to see from this stretch? To make it more comfortable for walking, biking, etc. Do you want bike lanes? Do you want larger sidewalks? Do you want trail? What about access to public transportation in the area? What could be improved? What would you like to see? Then we have the bottom cross section, the expanded or widened to meet our UDOT standards. Meeting the standards would allow for a safer interaction between vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists by providing 12-foot travel lanes, a 14-foot center turn lane, and shoulders. Now I'm going to pass the time over to Carissa from our UDOT environmental team to walk us through the possible solutions and alignment concepts that we'll be evaluating.
Thanks, Eric.
Hi, everyone. So as you can see here, we have a few options that will be evaluated during this SES process. So option 1 fits the additional travel lanes into the existing width of 1600 North. So this was the more narrow option that Eric just described. And while there would be trade-offs, as he discussed, like no active transportation facilities or a shoulder for your garbage can, there would also be less property impacts to the existing residences and properties along the corridor. So the second roadway profile that Eric showed includes the next two options, which would look at widening the roadway to UDOT standard width. So option 2 is the meander alignment, which basically just means adjusting the road to the north and to the south in an effort to minimize impacts to important resources. And widen to the south is, as the name suggests, we'll evaluate widening to the south, which was what was previously studied by the city of Orem. And finally, there is what's called the no action alternative, and this basically means nothing would be constructed. So it's included as an alternative in all environmental studies of this scale. And so this option would be selected in the event the study determines the possible benefit from the improvements doesn't outweigh the potential impacts. So if we go to the next slide, all right, talk about the environmental analysis. So as we just saw on the previous slide, some of the different alignments that we'll be evaluating. And right now we're currently in scoping, and the project team is gathering information about the area, the resources, its history, analyzing the traffic data, and soliciting feedback from the public, which is why we're here tonight. So all of this info helps to establish the study goals of the project. So the study team will take the potential alignments and narrow them down based upon the study goals, usually 1 or 2 alignments, and along with the no action alternative, which will be carried forward into a more detailed environmental analysis. So all of this is part of the environmental review process for a state environmental study, which provides this information to decision makers and allows them to carefully consider the anticipated benefits and impacts when making a project decision. So this slide shows some of the many different environmental considerations and resources that will be investigated during this study. So if there's certain resources that are particularly important to you, please submit a comment and let us know what they are and why. So on our next slide, we'll discuss the schedule. So what's up next? So as discussed, we're currently in scoping, and following this, we'll be refining the alignments and analyzing the impacts for this study. We'll then present the draft results of the study to the public at a public hearing, where we'll again solicit your guys' feedback. And this is anticipated to occur late summer or fall of next year. So after reviewing all of the public and stakeholders' input, UDOT will then make a decision and publish the final study in the decision document, which is expected in late 2022. So this study is happening as quickly as possible as the process allows, and will just take over a year to complete. So it's important to keep in mind that environmental studies are process-driven, meaning that this schedule is approximate and subject to change. But if at any time you're wondering where we're at in the schedule, feel free to pop onto the project website for updates.